Hello, friends. The 712th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The situation in Avdiivka for the Ukrainian armed forces continues to deteriorate, reported the Ukrainian military telegram channel Deep State. Despite certain statements from officials, the situation in the city continues to deteriorate. Today, the Russians literally came out of every hole. The enemy is focusing on consolidating and saturating personnel in the old Avdiivka and the Dacha settlement near the Avdiivka coke plant. In addition, the enemy tried to occupy the bridge over the railway. In most positions, the fighting is still continuing. In some places, the enemy managed to advance, and in others, the defense forces managed to repel attacks. A more accurate picture will emerge in the coming days. Traditionally, many questions arise regarding the preparation of defensive structures, such as around the city and in itself. But we will return to this topic someday, writes Deep State. According to Bild military observer Julian Ropke, the situation in Avdiivka is beginning to resemble Bakhmut. Russian troops are penetrating deeper into the city, trying to cut off the coke plant from the rest of the city. Moreover, as street fighting intensifies, the casualty ratio is becoming less and less in favor of Ukraine. Bakhmut 2.0, the journalist wrote. Meanwhile, according to data from the Ukrainian side on the northern flank of Avdiivka and in the northern part of the city, Russian troops continue assault operations on the eastern outskirts of the Yevhenii gardening partnership east of the coke plant along Lesy Ukrainki, Sepranova, and Zalizhnyi Lane streets. Enemy advances were recorded in an area up to 820 meters wide and to a depth of up to 230 meters. In the southern part of Avdiivka, Ukrainian armed forces, supported by a Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, counterattacked enemy forward positions along Chernyshevskoho Street, as a result of which a gray zone was added. In turn, Russian telegram channels report that their troops approached the Donetsk filtration station northeast of Avdiivka and began fighting on the outskirts of the facility. Other sources did not confirm this. Journalists from the Struna website talked to members of the Ukrainian armed forces who are fighting in Avdiivka. According to one of the officers, a week earlier the Russians broke through our positions from the south, from the side of the highway, breaking through to the Tsar's Hunt restaurant and beyond. Now heavy fighting is taking place in the area of Sportivna Street, Sidova Lane, and Lisna Street in the private sector on the outskirts of Avdiivka. The Russians also broke into the forest area near the filtration station, taking control of the private sector in the Vonogradniki area. But the most difficult situation has developed in the north of Avdiivka. Over the past few days, the Russians have walked around an artificial city reservoir on both sides, the sand quarry. Fighting is now taking place in the area of Stepova Streets from the northwest and in the area of Karyani Lane and the cemetery on Pisichnemu from the northeast. If the Russians manage to take control of the Ivashka area, reaching the railway, then they will have the opportunity to fire direct fire at the urban part of Avdiivka and threaten the entire group of the Ukrainian army, which protects urban development from the southern outskirts, from falling into the cauldron, one of them told reporters officers who is fighting in Avdiivka. In the private sector in Ivashka, this is the area of the sandy quarry. Now you can't raise your head. The Russians are bombing continuously with high-explosive bombs, artillery, and drones. They enter in groups of 20 to 30 people during breaks between attacks. Prisoners from storm units are storming us. More than 100 shells are now arriving at our positions per day, and we respond with a maximum of 20 shots. It's very difficult, but we're standing, we're not going back, admitted a Ukrainian army sergeant from Avdiivka. The situation in the private sector on the southern outskirts is the same. The Ukrainian military is almost continuously fired upon from all calibers, while the military speaks of the complete advantage of the Russians in drones. There is also a severe shortage of personnel. According to the military, the Russians have a very significant advantage in manpower and therefore can constantly strike at different parts of the front, probing for weak points. Ukraine's armed forces have begun transferring troops from units in the rear to fill out depleted infantry units at the front, the New York Times reports. As the war is now in its third year, Ukrainians find themselves outnumbered and outgunned after dominating the fighting in the first year and basically fighting to a standstill in the second. They lost momentum to Russia. Now they're digging in and fighting to hold on. The publication writes, "Right now we don't have enough equipment and people to go on the offensive. Therefore, the main task at the moment is to maintain current positions." The newspaper quotes the deputy battalion commander of the 47th Mechanized Brigade, Lieutenant Shershin. The epicenter of the fighting remains the Avdiivka region, where the Russian army continues to advance. Even small successes of Russia create risks for Ukraine. The capture of Maryanka after years of fighting allowed the Russians to open a new line of attack on another city, Vuhledar, from the north, the article says. British intelligence warned that Russia was likely to be able to continue this level of offensive activity for the foreseeable future. If the Russians are interested in a particular section of the front, they will raze it to the ground, said Major Betts, Chief of Staff of the 48th Separate Rifle Battalion of the 72nd Mechanized Brigade.
Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.